Well, I think at this time in racquetball history, where we still have people that were there from the beginning, it's important to capture the enthusiasm and the movement of the sport and the intellectualism of the people who were involved trying to plan what it was doing. And the top of that list is going to be Dr. Bud Muehleisen, one of the most respected people in the history of the sport. And I think it would give a little more color to the presentation if I explained my relationship with Dr. Bud and how I met him and how he helped me develop my game and in the course develop his own. It takes us back to 1964. And at that point, there was no known racquetball in San Diego County, or for that matter, in California. And we didn't hear about the sport of racquetball, which had been instituted probably around 1950, until the upcoming nationals in 1969. So we'll talk a little bit about how the sport of paddleball introduced the sport of racquetball in San Diego County and the part that Dr. Bud played to that vigorous movement. So back to 64, I was attending Crawford High School, and I was an excellent outdoor handball player, and competed and ultimately won the citywide championship in doubles with one of my 2B racquetball partners, David Charlson. And I found out that while my finger was broken and I was on disability from handball, I found out that there was another sport where people played basically the same game as handball, but they used a paddle, a solid wood paddle of approximately the same size as the original rackets. And I began hitting the ball at the San Carlos Club in San Diego with the paddle to just take up my time, keep in shape. And there were a few players that played at the San Carlos Club, and I felt that I could easily win the San Carlos Club championship after a month or two, and I did. And in the course of doing that, I learned that there was a national champion in paddleball, and his name was Dr. Bud Muehleisen. He was a local dentist, but had a long championship group of sports that he had worked with, including winning as a team concept with Berkeley in 1951 or 52, the National Tennis Collegiate Championship. And he was a fine badminton player. One of the things that I think is important to note is the way the sport of paddleball was at that time and early racquetball is that the sports of badminton, squash, and tennis could be brought in to compete with the players that were playing standard racquetball or paddleball. And Muehleisen had a unique game because he came from that unique background, being he was 17 years older than I was. And in those days, there was a period during the year where you'd play a certain kind of a sport. You'd play your outdoor sports, obviously, in the summer, and your indoor sports. And Muehleisen was coming directly from retirement at or about this time. He had gone to school for dentistry. He had finished his going into the Navy, I think he was in. And at any rate, he had done all of that and was now an adult and was looking for a way to stay in shape. So Bud Muehleisen had talked to Carl Loveday, who was a tremendous badminton player and all about athlete, and he taught Bud how to play paddleball by some method which I didn't get to witness, and which, whatever it was, it worked because he could really play. The first time I ever saw him was attending this tournament. And because of the way the logistics were in the two courts that were available, I played in the enclosed court and made the finals, but had never seen Dr. Muehleisen play. But I had seen him walk up to the club building. And that alone was intimidating. He was a Germanic individual with a very, very short military haircut, and he dressed impeccably in white. So that even though everyone else knew him as Dr. Bud, I always referred to him as the White Knight. He had even a white half golf club on as I watched him walk in, and he had absolutely clean, it looks like unused tennis shoes that were immaculate. Everything about him was sophisticated and in control. And I'd never seen anything like it. I mean, when I got to him in the tournament, I had a broken pair of glasses that I was trying to hold on as I played, and a bunch of garbage like clothing. And it was quite a contrast. Well, anyway, Dr. Bud punished me in the finals to a degree where I I learned that there were a lot of holes in my game after only a month and a half of preparation, and that he knew immediately by his analysis what they were, and he was able to continue each rally without ever risking losing center court or without having freak balls hit against him. Well, only that would score a point. An absolute 1 in 100 freak ball was what scored against him. Otherwise, you were on the tour, and you're on the tour until he decided to play some other style, which was infrequent. So after the match, he took me aside. I was in 10th grade, as I mentioned, and he said, are you available to come and play with me at 6:30 in the morning at the Copley YMCA? Had two beautiful courts, and I said certainly, even though it conflicted gravely with my Tijuana trips. I did start playing him, I believe it was 3 times a week in that situation, and I remember it so clearly for the first 6 months because the courts were situated below the main floor of the YMCA where the showers were. And after these matches in the morning, I could not get up the stairs to get to the showers, and I had to sit there. And I have an interesting story. The last time I went to Copley Y before they closed the courts, which was like 2 years ago, there was a buzzer outside of the court that I played Muehleisen on for you to press if there was a heart attack so that medical help could get there quicker. And I wondered to myself instinctively, someone must have played Bud recently to cause that to be installed, because that's what I felt like every day. Now, what he would do at my request is every day I asked him after the match to please give me a new shot. I would take that new shot that he demonstrated and showed me and told me how it should be utilized, and I would go back to the San Carlos Club where I practiced 1,000 shots a day every day, and I would work on these. So my ability to move up the ladder, even against Muehleisen, was rapid. And about, I would say, a year in, we were playing dead even. And after that period of time, Bud needed to get some breaks to compete with me and win the match. And he got them. He was the master of controlling the draw, controlling the court, controlling when matches were played. He was basically the head of the referees and the man that developed the rules in such a way that he was so respected in those areas that oftentimes myself, who was astute at noting legal errors done by my opponent, began to believe that that was a righteous win on that point. I never really moved from where I was not a protege. Even in this last year, I was calling Dr. Bud to have him explain shots that he utilized in his offense and how I could implement it even at 75 or 6 into my game finally, what should have been done many years ago. And so we had that relationship, but we also became competitors because we were the two best players in the game after he got me uh, properly anointed with the various techniques that I needed to become competitive, because I was a very, very strong competitor to begin with. Well, then comes racquetball. And when racquetball came, Bud had just lost his national championship in paddleball to me. So the next event was the racquetball matches. And Bud, as usual, trying to figure out every way legally he could utilize to win, had discovered a little used racket that was not a wood clunker. I was playing with the wood clunker, which almost everybody in the tournament was using. The 128 people, all of which thought they were going to win because they'd never been beaten. That type of an atmosphere is very unique. And Bud had a racket made in Ohio called the Dayton Steel. And with it, he gained the ability to wait longer on the ball before starting the swing and holding his opponent better. And he could hit the blow-by ball where he hit it wide angle around his opponent and punished him like he did in the paddle game with less effort. And he was interesting because when he played, even someone as good as I was, he would only get a token patch of sweat right here. And the rest of him was like coiffed. I mean, his hair was perfect. And I'm going, what am I doing lying on the floor here and running my ass off? And this guy is not even sweating. But that's what he brought to the game. He brought that meticulous beauty and smoothness and knowing how to move his body in a way that most advantaged him, by which I mean most disadvantaged his opponent. And he had these sweeping motions where the player had to give him room when he was on offense, and that gave him additional over and above his it was almost, I mean, it's hard to believe the accuracy he had and the few errors he would make mentally or physically. There were none mentally, and there were none physically. He did not make mistakes. So beating him in any tournament with that combination and him having the superior racket was a real chore, and I wasn't up to the task. I played him in the finals of the first nationals, and I barely lost in the sense that I'd won the first and was way up in the second, but he was able to get that choice call again, which I knew was going to be coming at one time or another, but I didn't react as well as I should have when it did come, and he was able to flip the script and win in 3. I think it was very, very good for the sport that between the two of us, he became the first national title holder because he was an adult, a respected adult that acted like an adult and had all the credentials necessary for people to respect the sport, which they did. And he did dozens and dozens of clinics in all contexts to help people become interested in racquetball. And he decided to switch the entire group in San Diego to rackets rather than paddles. I wish that I had kept both sports in my repertoire longer. As I got older, I really enjoyed playing paddleball and played almost exclusively paddleball from 40 on. But I love both games, and Dr. Bud loved both games, but he had a better chance of winning with the racket. There was no question about that. And it was an up and growing sport that was much easier to promote because it involved the women more easily, and the rackets were being developed and scientifically improved as opposed to the club that we were using in paddleball. So it worked out great, and Bud, because of his knowledge from the paddleball community, brought the rules in. The rules were basically taken from a mixture of handball rules and paddleball rules, and Dr. Bud was the leader of the team to develop the rules. One of the first conflicts were what was the name going to be? One of Bud's best friends was the one that invented the word racquetball, as it was originally called paddle rackets when we were first notified of the existence of the tournament. Bud did all of the work and assisting the organization of a national program. So one of the things that I admire most about Dr. Muehleisen is that he didn't retire after he won the nationals. He played in the age brackets for many, many years, and he developed such a credential from that play, playing all different kinds of players all over the country in his age bracket, or he would sometimes play down because he was such a great player. And he kept those divisions vital. Well, he made them vital to begin with, and then he kept them vital. There's a celebratory trophy given to the best Masters player. Well, by that I mean in the older divisions. The best one is called the Bud Muehleisen Award, and rightfully so. He made that division, and the division actually became one of the strongest aspects of racquetball over the next 40 years. And I just attended at the PPA in San Diego a 80 plus division, and those guys were playing excellent ball. It was outstanding event for me to witness. It gave me hope of playing more in the future, which I would like to do. I want to honor the sport the way Dr. Muehleisen did. And he would instruct me over time about my shenanigans on the court and how I could be more. I don't know if he thought I'd be more popular with the crowd if I didn't denigrate the other opponent or whatever else the people were confused about in my activities. And I gradually changed my behavior to accommodate lots of his requests, although it always, unfortunately, has prevented me from getting what I really deserve, which is the Lifetime Sportsmanship Award. Perhaps that is in the future.